Have you ever been promoted to a leadership role and your boss says, you need to stop doing all the technical work yourself, you need to delegate more? And the reality is, you want to delegate. You just don't know how to stop doing the work you're actually good at and start doing the leadership work you're still figuring out. Most organizations promote technical leaders into leadership roles without changing your workload. Maybe you do need to develop new skills, shift your identity, and change how you engage your staff to empower them to own their work. That's totally true. Have you ever been promoted to a leadership role and maybe it's director, VP, principal investigator, department chair, and your boss says, you need to stop doing all the technical work yourself. You need to delegate more. Sound familiar? And you think, but I'm the most qualified person to do this work and I'm faster than my team and I catch things that they miss and it's easier for me to get things done much faster and I don't have time to get them up to speed. I might as well do it myself. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. 6 months later, you're the bottleneck. And you're now working nights and weekends doing your new leadership job and still doing a bunch of things from your past role. And your team is waiting on you for decisions. And you haven't made anything faster just because you're good at it. And your boss says again, you're still operating like an individual contributor, not the leader I need you to be. And the reality is, you want to delegate. You want to think strategically. You want to develop your team so that they can take things off of your plate. You just don't know how to stop doing the work you're actually good at and start doing the leadership work you're still figuring out. Well, this is the expert's dilemma. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the Hard Skills. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu. And this is the episode we're closing our Strategic Clarity series, episode 3. In episode 1, we talked about the black hole of reactivity and introduced the 2x2 diagnostic matrix at the organizational level and the responsibility level about whose is it to solve and what problem it exists at. In episode 2, we added a third part to this framework, understanding the invisible architecture, the unspoken rules and hidden dynamics that determine whether your solutions will actually work. And today, we're going to bring all of these parts together using an example to solve for the expert's dilemma. Because for experts who have transitioned to leaders, everyone treats the solution like an individual level problem, right? They send you to coaching and say, we'd like you to learn how to delegate more. But sometimes it requires a bit more than that, right? Because if it was that easy, no one would fall into that trap and we'd all quickly let it go. But you're probably thinking, is this really such a complicated problem that I have to apply an entire multi-level diagnostic framework to this? No, not necessarily, but we also don't want to just assume just yet that you don't need it, right? Let's just say if it's really simple, then you can make the change easily, right? But if you find yourself not able to extract yourself from that black hole of reactivity we talked about in episode 1, or stuck in the weeds doing tactical work, unable to get the strategic thinking your role actually requires, and trying and trying and trying and still not able to make what appears to be a simple change, then it's time to whip out the more nuanced diagnostic framework to see if maybe we can get some strategic clarity here. So let's apply it, okay? Let's start with the vertical organization level question. And we're just going to take this example, this very simple delegation example, and blow it up to see where we can get stuck. Okay. So we're going to start with the organizational level question. What organizational level does this problem exist at? And remember, this question asks, is it the individual level, the team level, the organizational level, or societal level, or some combination? So at the individual level, you might admit, yeah, in fact, I do need to develop new skills, new delegation skills, ability to coach my team up, more strategic thinking skills. And if you've spent your entire career being rewarded for technical excellence and haven't been provided with sufficient leadership development training, you probably haven't built these capabilities up. So it could rest at the individual level. But let's not stop there completely. At the team level, maybe you've noticed your team hasn't developed those competencies at the level you have. And maybe they're not as fast, or maybe they make mistakes you wouldn't make. And you don't have clear processes for how to develop them or delegate them systematically and effectively. That's just as much of a team capability gap. And then maybe at the organizational level, this is one that I think most people miss. And most organizations promote technical leaders into leadership roles without changing your workload. For example, many clinical leaders, like physicians and therapists, still have clinical expectations that are not realistic given how administrative management works, and without adjusting expectations for how long it might take for you to get onboarded and up to speed, it's surprisingly longer than most people give, or without providing sufficient leadership development, they just expect you to figure it out, and without creating structures that enable delegation. So that would be an organizational design problem if that existed, right? If they change your title but not the system around you or how to shift into that title, that would be an organizational level issue. Now, there might also be a societal conditioning level. If you've been trained or socialized your entire career to believe that your value comes from technical excellence, being an excellent doer or executor, and being an expert in your field, it's really hard to let that go. I mean, who are you if you can't now demonstrate that? This can be a real identity shift that takes some time to reflect on and embrace. There could even be some grieving, some regret, some guilt feeling about not doing that work anymore. It requires taking time to create a new understanding, a new meaning, a new purpose for the new way that you're going to be engaging in your work. So, yeah, it might not be that simple for some of us, and it's good to take a step back and just evaluate that. So, that is the organization level question. Let's move to the responsibility level question. Whose responsibility is it to solve? Again, this might seem obvious at first. It's your responsibility to delegate better, right? But maybe there's some nuance there. Yeah, maybe you do need to develop new skills, shift your identity, and change how you engage your staff to empower them to own their work. That's totally true. But it's partly your team's responsibility too. They also need to develop the level of competence that you can trust them to do the work. And certainly you don't want to set them up for failure, right? They need to pick up those skills and feel good about it. And maybe it's also partly your organizational responsibility of the leaders, right? Your leaders may need to adjust their expectations during this transition, provide developmental support, create structures that enable you to lead the way that you expect, and your boss needs to share what they imagine you to be doing and not doing, create space for you to transition, and coach you up to pick up the delegation skills. Just like you are coaching your people up, your boss would need to be coaching you up. So we're beginning to design a map to create a more thoughtful and effective transition into the role, and delegating would only be one of the skills you'd be implementing and learning. Now, let's add the invisible architecture from episode 2. Who actually has influence on whether you can transition successfully? This is not something that many people ask themselves, but it has a massive impact on your success. It's not just your boss who has influence on whether you can transition successfully, it's also whoever controls resources, schedules, priorities, messaging. Are there people making it hard to effectively delegate or do other parts of your job? Maybe there are negative influencers on your own team. I hope not, but it does happen. Maybe it's somebody who applied for your role, didn't get it, and now you're supervising them. I've heard of that often. And it's really tough, and they do have an influence on whether you can transition successfully. The second question, what's the weight of the history? Has your organization successfully transitioned technical experts to leaders before? Or do promoted leaders consistently struggle and burn out? If there's a pattern, and you're not the only one, that tells you this is a systemic problem, not your personal failure. And finally, how do decisions really get made about success? Does your organization genuinely evaluate you on your ability to delegate? Or do they say they want you to delegate, but in fact, still primarily reward individual technical output? If the invisible reward structure doesn't match what they're telling you to do, you might be trapped. So now that you've made the assessment, maybe you're realizing there are some important areas that need to be addressed. And so now the solution is much more comprehensive and nuanced, and it can include a wide variety of things besides you getting some delegation ability or training, right? Here are 7 different things it could include. Number 1, request leadership training, mentorship, and coaching for you with enough time for the learning and transition to allow for success. 2, secure closer supervision and support from your boss and explicitly discuss the factors that need to be put in place for your success. 3, improve team capability and train them up during this transition as well. 4, determine how success is measured in the organization and whether you can align the delegation and other team capabilities and yours with that definition of success. 5, determine whether there are people creating unwanted challenges to your ability to train your team up. Who are they and what must be done to address the issue? Number 6, decide if you need time to reflect on how you view your new role and adjust to the change in the demands, expectations, and identity. And maybe, or 7, determine there are problematic organizational systems and mixed messages about delegating while you're doing. It can be any of these, all of these, more of these, some different ones. But the point is to get strategic clarity about what's actually yours to change and what needs to change at other levels and how to navigate that invisible architecture always in the background, always functioning. That's how you move from reactive to strategic. That's how you reclaim your agency. So here's what I want you to take away from this series. Strategic clarity requires diagnostic thinking. When you're stuck, pause and diagnose. What organizational level does this problem exist at? Whose responsibility is it to solve? What invisible architecture is at play? Having that diagnostic framework or any other gives you clarity. And clarity gives you the ability to take agency over your next steps. And having a systems level perspective gives you the greatest opportunity for a really strong, long lasting solution. So, want to explore the root causes of various challenges that leaders often face and get more tips for it? You can take my free strategic leadership resiliency assessment. It takes just 5 minutes. It includes a 13-page guide to help you diagnose your biggest strategic challenge right now and help you address it. You can find it at www.gotowerscope.com or check the show notes and access it directly. And if you're ready for more structured support, a reminder, I'm offering a half-day strategic clarity lab workshop on February 23rd, specifically designed to help you move from reactive to proactive, strategic, and intentional in your leadership role. The enrollment deadline is February 12th. The link to register is in the show notes. And of course, you can always just reach out to me and schedule a free consultation to explore working together in various other ways, whether it's serving as a strategic executive advisory coach, a speaker, or team facilitator. You can do that at gotowerscope.com and click on that button that says free consultation. This concludes our strategic clarity series, though I'm going to share a more personal bonus episode on it very soon before we get to starting our next series, which is going to be focused on career transitions. So until then, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, and this is The Hard Skills. Stay steady, stay present, and keep building those hard skills muscles.